want you to all listen carefully on what I am saying. These things I teach will be with you after I am gone. I want you to all listen carefully on what I am saying. These things I teach will be with you after I am gone, and will serve you in years to come. You'll be able to sum them up in 7 easy teachings. I lead from below, love one another.
Did he just say after I'm gone? I wonder where he's going. I wonder if I can go with him. I would never deny him if he asked me to follow him. I'm taking such good notes. I'm the disciple Jesus loved the most. I gotta remember to include that later. Okay, to summarize his teaching, lead from below, love one another, don't be troubled, you are not alone, remain in me, I choose you, and have peace. These I can call 7 lessons from the upper room.
When you think of a king or a queen, what do you think of? My name's Ron, and I am certainly not a king, and I am glad to be with you this morning. It was enjoyable just worshiping with you, and I'm privileged to be your campus pastor here in Greene. Great introduction. We are looking at 7 lessons from the upper room, and we're going to be doing that over the next number of weeks together. But when I said king or queen, what did you think of? Anybody think of England? Maybe some of you, maybe Queen Elizabeth. Anybody think of Queen Elizabeth when you heard queen? A couple people. How about King Charles? Anybody think of that? Maybe he's less thought of. A few decades ago, Prince Charles and Princess Diana were all the focus of the news, right? Some of you haven't lived that long. But in my childhood, they were all the focus of the news, and then today, Prince William and, of course, Harry are all the focus today, right? There's almost a universal draw toward royalty. What little girl doesn't grow up wishing at some point she could have the tiara, be the princess, have her prince, and become a king and queen, and have a kingdom and a happily ever after? We kind of are drawn to that. Even in royal families, being royal isn't enough. You want to be king. You want to be queen. You want to have the top spot. And there's actually 43 nations in our world right now that have kings and queens. Now, I know a lot of them are celebrity status with some influence, but in history, king and queens have had absolute power. Absolute power. So what would you do if you had absolute power? What would you do if you were king or queen? A few elementary students were asked that question, and I just want to give you some of their responses. So here's from Adrian, age 8. He says, "My castle will be on the mountain. I'll rule the world and take bubble baths." Sounds great, right? That sounds relaxing. Diana, age 7, takes a completely different approach. She said, "I would take care of everything." Wow, she's got responsibility. "I would make sure everyone has what they need, and I would make sure that they are all safe." She's got a totally different perspective. Marlia, age 8, says, "I would say no killing bugs. I would say bring me gold, and I will be very bossy. And I'm going to sit on a big, big chair." She's got it figured out. Saros, age 8, says, "If I was king, I would change the rules. And if I want a toy, I get a toy. If I want money, I get money. And if I have a lot of money, I'm going to buy a pool." So he knew what he wanted to do with that money. Cassandra, age 7, says, if I were queen, the first rule would be don't eat any vegetables, only candy. That's the only thing, to eat candy. And for some of you, if you know Justin, she's the perfect queen for Pastor Justin. So what would you do? Get rid of taxes. That sounds great. I forgot I was holding my iPad. Maybe for some of you, it's something very different than what those kids would do, but maybe in some ways not so different. Because I think already the kids have figured out that with power and position comes the ability, or at least they think it should, to have what you want, to do what you want, to tell other people to do what you want them to do, and to have them do stuff for you. And they already have that built into their view of power. Liz, age 9, kind of puts it very simple and clear. She says, I would do whatever I want. I would be king. Of course I would. And with power and position and celebrity status, our human response is often to hold power over other people and to work for our advantage and to make everything about us. After all, if we're at the top and it's our kingdom, shouldn't other people cater to us? And as we look at our world, I think that often comes out in how our movie stars act, our rock stars, our politicians, our celebrities, our CEOs. This is often how people act toward power. But what if Jesus has a completely different view of royalty, of leadership, of power? And we're going to take a look at that today. Would you turn or tap with me in your copy of the Bible to John chapter 13. We're going to be on page 866 in the chair Bible in the seat in front of you. And if you need a Bible, or you need an easy-to-read Bible, or you have a friend that you'd love to give a Bible to, we'd love you to take that and to have it as our gift. I'm going to be on page 866, John 13. And what's going on right here, John is one of Jesus' closest friends. And we saw that in the buffer video. He's writing it down. He wrote a portrait of greatness in this chapter, in power, in full display, but very different than what we see in our world around us. As we enter this passage, Jesus has 24 hours to live. He's got 12 devoted students. They're sitting with him. They're his friends. They're in the room, and they're going to soon graduate. This is kind of the last chance to communicate. Let's sit in on their final class. Verse 1, chapter 13, says, It was just before Passover festival, and Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Loved them to the end. 24 hours to live. It's custom for Galileans to celebrate Passover the day before everyone else. So Jesus and his disciples, it's a day ahead, I get that, but that was custom for Galileans. And they're sitting down and they're going to celebrate Passover together. And Jesus does this here with his closest friends, with his students, his disciples. But it's very different this year because all week Jesus has been laser focused. He's been passionate, a little on edge. And Jesus knew his time was short. And this night was that last and final chance. So he's going to drop these 7 lessons and communicate to his closest friends. Verse 2, and John writes, he says, the evening meal, so Passover meal, was in progress. And the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So the meal's in progress. I picture they have just shared the bread and the wine. They have participated in Jesus' display of unity. We call it communion, the Lord's Supper. They've just participated in that. He's in that, predicted. I'm soon going to die. I'm going to lay down my body. I'm going to shed my blood. And then we come to this point in the passage, and Jesus knows something they don't. He knows that Judas was prepared to betray him, and that he is the king of the universe. All things are under his power and authority. Everything. He's that king. He has all authority. Everything, everyone, he has unlimited power. If you knew someone was about to betray you, what would you do? If you knew you were king and had all power, what would you do? Maybe what would you do about that person that was going to betray you as you knew that? But check out what Jesus does. He got up from the table, up from the meal, and he takes off his outer garments. He puts a towel around his waist. So he gets out the towel. He then gets out a basin and he pours water. He kneels down and begins to wash the feet of his disciples, to dry them with the towel. King of the universe stoops down, washes the feet of his disciples, and dries them off. I don't think that's what I would have done. I don't think that's my first choice. Jesus puts himself in the place of a servant. The outer garments, he leaves his undergarments, which were the clothes of a servant. He takes the water, he grabs the feet, he washes them. In a culture today where we take daily showers, we stay clean, we have clean clothes and socks and nice shoes, we walk on paved roads and sidewalks, washing people's feet is still awkward. Are there some people's feet that you wouldn't want to wash? No names, please. Probably. So put yourself into Jesus' time and his culture. They wore sandals. They walked all day in the dust. They sweated into their leather sandals. They didn't have the opportunity of daily baths. Their feet would not have been pleasant. How do you, just on the other side, how do you feel when you have dirty feet? And then who wants to wash someone else's dirty, stinking feet? It was a mark of Jewish hospitality to provide water for a guest. Sometimes to provide a foreign slave that would wash their feet. But you were to wash your own feet primarily. And the hospitality was, I'm going to provide water and there's going to be an opportunity for you to wash your feet. To wash someone else's feet was a choice. Unless you're a foreign slave, it was a choice. You could not compel a Jew to wash another Jew's feet, not even a Jewish slave. Foreign slave, yes, not a Jewish slave. A wife, they could choose to wash the feet of their husband to show respect. A child could choose to wash the feet of their father. A student could choose to wash the feet of their teacher to give them honor. It was highly recommended that your elders and your highly respected people in the community that you would wash their feet. It was recommended, not required. It was a choice. But that husband, that father, that rabbi, that elder never washed the feet of someone lower than them. Never. That didn't happen. That would be putting yourself on the level of a foreign slave. That would be lowering yourself to the lowest point. That would be humiliating and degrading and beneath yourself. But Jesus. Can you think of Israel's King Herod washing people's feet? How about go a little bit deeper? Can you picture Pilate or Caesar in Rome washing someone's feet? They would never. But Jesus, King of the universe, with all authority and all power, he gives this ultimate upper room lesson. He washes the feet. See, King Jesus chose to be a servant. He chose to put himself lower than a slave. And this is greatness. This is greatness. And so Jesus, he took the towel and the water and he knelt down at John's feet. Well, John will one day write this for us, and he will kneel and he will wash John's feet. Can you picture what John is thinking? I'm not worthy of this. Maybe I should have been the one to wash the feet. How can Jesus do this? How would John have felt? If you were in John's place, how would you react? Check out what happens next. Verse 6. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? It's not happening. And Peter backs up and he pulls away, and I think I would have done the same thing. I would have felt unworthy, and I would have stubbornly said, no, I can't let you do that. Let me wash your feet. And I would have missed the entire point. Look what Jesus says. He says, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Never, ever, never. You're never going to wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash, you have no part in me. Wow. Jesus is explaining to Peter, but Peter's not getting it. You know, if you don't get this, Peter, you don't get me. If you don't accept me as servant, then you don't accept me. I think it probably may reflect a lot of us. I can be independent. Don't talk to my wife. I can be independent, stubborn. I'm often willing to blaze my own trail. And I love to help other people, but I hesitate to receive help. And that all sounds very American, but it's a trap that Peter fell into. See, it takes humility to serve, but it also takes humility to be served and to allow someone else to help you with your dirt and your mess. That takes humility. And Jesus is teaching them. He's showing them humility. He's asking them to be humble. And so Peter in his exuberance, well, I'm not going to reject Jesus. I embrace Jesus. Look what Peter says next. He says, then, Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head. Okay, Lord, let's go get a bath. I want it all. And Jesus answers, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean. Talking to all of his friends there, every one of you, but not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said not everyone was clean. You see, Peter had embraced Jesus. And Jesus was teaching him an object lesson. But there was one there that had not fully embraced Jesus. And yet, Jesus washes Judas's feet. Which one of us would choose to do that? I wouldn't. And yet, challenged with Jesus' example, it's exactly what I should do. Verse 12, he said, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. Do you get it? And I think on their faces, nope, they don't get it. They're dumbstruck. And Jesus goes on, he says, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so. I'm this place. I'm the top. I am your teacher. I am your Lord. I am that King of the universe. And he says, now that I, your Lord and teacher, I'm up there. Now that I have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. And there comes the challenge. And Jesus had taught many times to this point that the greatest must become the servant. That the least was actually great. He had turned things upside down. And here, as they ate Passover, Jesus he demonstrates how much that meant. What that really looked like. This was a picture of Jesus' complete love. The king, the ruler, the teacher. You see, they're all on top in man's kingdom. But God's kingdom is upside down. Actually, man's kingdom is probably upside down. God's is right side up. But it's backwards from what we think of, isn't it? The greatest man of all, the greatest authority, he stooped down. He became the servant to honor the servant. So then how about his followers? How about us? If the king acts like a slave, what does that say about his people? And Jesus has freed us, right? But he hasn't freed us just to make it all about us. He's freed us to be willing to serve. Jesus used his power to serve others. And he called his closest friends to do the same thing, to follow him, to serve as he served. And Jesus calls us to serve others, to treat them with honor. See, in man's kingdom, people serve the great. But in God's kingdom, servanthood is true royalty. Check out the last verse in this section, verse 17. It wraps up the paragraph. It says, now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Now that you know this, and I think Jesus is saying, let it sink in. And if you understand it, if this changes you, then happiness and fulfillment will be the result. If you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. So if I'm going to follow Jesus, do I need to get out a scrub brush and a bucket and soap and water? Do I need to go down the street and ask people to sit so I can wash their feet? I might creep some people out. I don't know how well that would be received. Actually, washing someone's feet can be very personal and humbling and is an act of service. It really is. But to follow this example is not all about going around shining toenails. That's not the point. The point is to serve as Jesus has served. Philippians 2 says that Jesus set aside his advantages. He put aside his advantages and took on the very nature of a servant, of a slave. He had the mindset to say, I have it all, but I'm going to set it aside to serve others. And Paul goes on in that same chapter, Philippians 2, to say, have that same mindset. You live out that mindset. And here's how he describes describes it. He says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests. Don't just make it about you, but take an interest in others too. Paul was challenging us to serve, to put others first. Washing feet is one example of that, and Jesus demonstrated it so clearly and so well that he was willing to put himself as under a Jewish slave to say, King of the universe is here to serve. Follow me. So what does that look like? What does this look like? Maybe you're wondering, can the greatest actually serve the least? That really doesn't fit our world. That just doesn't work. And you're right. It doesn't. That's not the way our world works. That's upside down, backwards from the way our world works. But God calls us to values that are beyond this world. He calls us to a perspective that is beyond the people around us. And so while our world says, climb the ladder for success and don't worry about who you step on the way up, God says true greatness is being willing to lift someone else up, to lift others up. That's a mindset shift. That's taking on the mindset of Jesus. Maybe you're thinking, but I have in my position, in my career, in my family, I have an image to protect. I have an image to uphold, a reputation. I can't be around certain people. I can't do certain things. And I just want to ask you, who are you trying to impress? Greatness in God's eyes is caring for others. Even caring for others that nobody else sees, that can't increase your value, that can't increase your status. Making time for people that can't give anything back. That's a mindset shift. Maybe you're thinking, serving others probably will take time. It'll probably take some money. And I don't have any to spare. And I'd just like to ask, how much did Jesus give for you? How valuable is the person that you know God wants you to serve? Start small. Do what you can to bring value to them, to show them they are valuable and they are worthwhile, and care for them. And so if you're too overscheduled and your budget's too stretched to be able to do that, then are you willing to work on building margin? Take small steps, work on building margin so that you are able to serve. It's a mindset shift. It's a change of focus. Servanthood is true royalty. And we're God's kids. We're his royalty. We want to show that. Be willing to serve. Kingdom greatness is actually found in humble service. When we love others like Jesus did with his heart, we are actually sharing the greatness of the kingdom. We actually become great in God's kingdom. And when we're willing to serve others, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, or no matter who we are or where we're from, when we treat them with dignity and respect and honor, we show them God's love. We show them God's kingdom. We become great in God's kingdom. When we take the interest of others and place a priority on that, we actually exchange the greatness of this world for the greatness of God's kingdom. And personally, I've been challenged by this throughout my life, this example. And and it changes how I look at people and how I want to interact with people. And just a few days ago, I had an opportunity, an older man, and we ran into each other at the gas station. And he was exasperated. He was talking a mile a minute. I could barely understand what he was trying to communicate. But as I slowed down and had him slow down and started to understand, he was trying to go a very long trip to get a new job late in his career. And he had a new car. He had driven his last car for over 20 years, and he had a new car because that one had died. He was very frustrated with the workshop. But he had this new car, and he didn't understand any of it. He didn't understand the gauges. He was so frustrated he wasn't going to be able to make the trip and get to his new job. And in my day was extremely busy that day. I'd had multiple appointments that got shifted and added, and other things that had come in my way. And I could have I just pushed him off. Like, okay, I can't fix your problem. Let me go on with my day. But I took time to stop, to slow down, to listen, and to help him understand his new car and launch him on his trip. And I'll probably never see him again. But he gave me the opportunity to, in a moment of time, share the servanthood of Jesus. Lately, I've been challenged that one of my greatest ways to share servanthood is with my wife and my children. And so often it's easy to get frustrated with those who are closest to you. And you live close to them, and you see all the good and the not so good, and you can get frustrated. But my wife and my children are exactly the people God gave me to serve. And it's one of the greatest gifts to get to share servanthood with them. But that's a mindset shift, isn't it? See, when we use who we are and what we have for others, we're going to begin to change our focus and take the focus off of me and share my focus with others and see them and care about them and stop and listen. And as we do that, our hearts are going to shift from selfishness to love. And as we do that, we're going to impact our families, we're going to impact our communities, and what we're going to show them is a totally different type of greatness. Servanthood is true royalty. This morning, would you join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you this morning for giving us Jesus. You sent your Son, your only Son. And he left the greatness of heaven. And he stooped down to our dirt. And he came for us. And I thank you for this picture this morning of washing feet, to take one of the dirtiest things and be willing to wash that as the place of a slave. God, you did that for us. But Jesus didn't stop with this picture. Jesus willingly gave his life. He gave his body. He poured out his blood. He sacrificed himself to pay for my sin, to pay for our sin. God, I want to thank you for that this morning. Thank you for loving us that much. Jesus rose again, and he gives us the opportunity of forgiveness and new life and a new relationship with God. And I want to just ask you, have you accepted that gift this morning? For all who are here this morning, maybe there's some that have never asked you to forgive them, God. I just pray that you would, with your Spirit, impress upon them the greatness of what you've given and that free offer and that gift, and I ask that they would ask you for salvation today. Dear God, you gave us the example of service. You did it through your Son. Help us to have a heart of service. Would you change our mindset? Would you give us the mindset of Jesus? We would be willing to not put all eyes on us, not be out for our advantage, but to care about others, to slow down, to listen, to care about even those who can never give us anything in return. God, help us to love like you love. May you change us more into the image of your Son. I pray this in Jesus' name.